Morning, everybody. Welcome to a session of Compass. Compass is a white tea, and many of you, when you look at this tea this morning, you'll see that it looks like something else that we have on our board. Kind of looks like something else we have on our board. Kind of looks like silver needle. Well, Compass is a type of silver needle. So today, by the end of this session, you're going to understand why these things look different, what region each of the teas comes from, why those regions matter, and you're going to have a little bit of history about silver needle. In addition, you'll understand a little bit more about white tea. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So, I wish we could believe everything we read, because if we could, then we would look at a book which was published in the 1980s, which said that white tea originated during the Sung dynasty. Now, let me help all of you, because while everything else in what I just said, you understood, Sung dynasty, let's get us situated. So the part of the Sung dynasty that I'm really referring to is between 1100 and 1126. Now that's not obviously the whole Sung dynasty, but there's a particular emperor at that time. Huizong, that's what his name is. So what was this guy good at? Well, he was good. He was a great painter. Great is probably too big. He was a very good painter. He was a Taoist. He was a patron of the arts. He liked ceramics. And then he wrote stuff. And one of the things he wrote was a treatise about this beautiful tea that he had. And he called it jade-like, white jade-like in color. And so scholars in the West started to believe, oh, white tea came into existence during the Sung dynasty. Now, all of you know better, because at that time, what was the only style of tea that was extant as far as we know? Green tea, period. End of report. No other processing modality has been proven or established at that time. So really, let's deconstruct what that emperor was writing about. He had gotten a gift of tribute tea from an albino tree. But how was it processed? It was processed in a green tea modality. Now, what does green tea modality mean? Because if I use this and throw this thing around, and then I'm about to use white tea modality, you want to know the difference. Green tea modality is you deactivate the enzyme, which causes oxidation. And how do you do that? Many, many ways, but they all begin with heat. Steam heat, pan frying heat, oven heat. You can do denaturing the oxidation enzyme in many different ways, but that's how tea was made at that time. And what the emperor was drinking was still a green tea modality, period. So white tea wasn't invented then. So let's think of it. Well, before we think, let's find out what white tea modality is. White tea modality is you pick, you wither, and then you wither some more, and then some more if it's not raining or foggy. If it's raining or foggy, you put it on very low heat. Let's define very low heat, 100 degrees. And you slowly dry it. And as you dry, that also serves to denature the oxidation enzyme. Now, it doesn't do it as fast as with green tea. So therefore, white tea has a little bit of oxidation. And what are we talking about? 2 to 3%, 4% tops. Green tea, 0, essentially. Nothing is really true 0, right? But essentially 0 for your and my purposes. Oolong tea, anywhere from 10 to 80% oxidation. Red tea, what people in the West call black tea, heavily oxidized, anywhere from, actually we have some in here that's about 83, 84%, but most red teas oxidized around 90 to 95%. So that gives you some sense of where white tea is on this oxidation scale. And this is going to be important later when we talk about alleged health benefits, because alleged health benefits and oxidation, degree of oxidation, partially go together. And we'll explain that as we move forward. But we still haven't invented white tea yet. So here we are in the Sung Dynasty, this emperor who was a great supporter of the arts, just a great old guy, but a lousy ruler, had to abdicate his throne in 1126. Oh, wait a minute, this is not a history lesson. Let's stop right there and go to the invention.
Wait, did that hurt tea production when he had to abdicate? I mean, it could be important.
Great question. The question was, did that hurt tea production when he abdicated? All on-ground wars hurt tea production, period. And the reason he abdicated is because he was facing a war, which his abdication didn't prevent. So yes, production was hurt. All right, so is there some watershed date that I can give you where we can say white tea exists the year before it didn't exist? Answer is no. And as we look at history, what we try and do when we're trying to set up dates for the invention of this thing or this modality or that modality, we're always looking at all the sources. So we're looking at official sources, we're looking at literary sources. Recall that one of the reasons we were able to start to nail down an oolong date is because of a poem written in 1635, where it referred to a processing modality that turned out to be a cliff tea oolong processing modality. So in recent history, there's been two thoughts about the start of white tea. One was that it started in the late 1800s. And when Xiaobing and I first started looking at this, we kind of believed that. But now, as we've done more research, we think it started much earlier. In fact, we agree with a segment of Chinese historians who say 1796. That's the first appearance of reference to silver needle as far as we can tell. So at the start of this, we talked about fooding, we talked about zhenghe. We didn't talk about them, but I mentioned them as places where white tea grows, famous places where white tea grows. And for those of you who haven't checked your email in the last hour, I sent you a map of Fujian province so that you could figure out where we're talking about today. And in the northern part, you'll notice that there's a place name called Zhenghe, Z-H-E-N-G-H-E. And then if you go directly east, slightly north of that, there's a place called Fuding, F-U-D-I-N-G. And then if you go slightly west and slightly north, there's a place called Jianyang. We're not going to talk much about Jinyang, but we'll talk a lot about Zhenghe and Fuding throughout the rest of the session. Let's get Jinyang taken care of in a couple sentences so I can focus on Zhenghe and Fuding. So people who live in Jinyang believe, some of them believe, that maybe white tea started there. And certainly Jinyang is a famous white tea production place. And the terroir and the processing modality is a white tea processing modality. But there's no historical allusions that we can find which would put it in Jinyang. And I've never seen any historical allusions to that. So it's either Zhenghe or it's Fuding, but in the background static, there's a little bit about Jinyang. All right. So again, this name, Silver Needle, by Hao Yingzhen, Silver Needle. Okay. We have one on our board, and that's from Zhenghe. And so Zhenghe has a particular varietal called big leafed varietal from Zhenghe. And that's what their Silver Needle is made from. Fuding also has a different varietal called big leaf Fuding. So I'm going to have to get to the varietal section in a minute. Let's go back to 1796 and this mention of Fuding and by Hao Yingzhen, Silver Needle. So you have documents, and these would be documents related to production documents, they're related to local histories in Chinese, in China, that talk about in 1796 creation of Silver Needle. So does that mean all the modes of making white tea were invented at that time? Probably not. Probably all the rest of the modes, and I might have to talk about that as well, got invented over the next 50 or 60 years, slowly. Why or what were they using to invent Silver Needle? Well, remember, I said it was Fuding, and remember, I said there's a varietal called big leafed Fuding. However, this varietal, to the best of anybody's knowledge, and certainly the documentary evidence says it didn't show up until 1850. Uh-oh, we're getting into historical weeds. Are we out of the weeds yet? Sorry about that, not yet. We still have more to go. So the process to make Silver Needle was invented in 1796, but they were using a different varietal in that location. 1850, they do this big leafed varietal in Fuding. What happens? The farmers say, oh my gosh, yield is higher. Oh, look at those needles, huge. That's good. We like huge. Very attractive. Yes.
Question, what was the name of the Zhenghe varietal? Were they both big leaf?
Yes. So, but they're two different big leaves. So the Zhenghe varietal, it actually is Zhenghe Da Baye, something like that. The Fuding is Fuding Da Baye. Okay, it's two completely different varietals.
With the same name, essentially. Well, one attributed to one city and one with other cities' name or properties.
Okay, love this question because what this is a reminder of is why we have all these different names on this board, because so many of the names are repetitive. And so many of the names, especially for us in the West, we would look at that and say, oh, it's the same thing. No, it's not. The actual village name or the in this case, county name is part of the name and makes the whole name. And therefore, from that perspective is different. And that's why usually we give other names to things so that there's less confusion. So today's Silver Needle, and don't be confused, it is Silver Needle that we're having today, called Compass. Why did we call it Compass? Because if I have two silver needles on the board, you come walking into this beautiful shop, you say to the tea master, I want silver needle. And if I had it arranged like that, her response would be, oh, do you want Fuding or Zhenghe? And then you'd be lost. I don't remember what I want. So that's why we use two separate names. And your next question, which I can feel coming, are there other hidden, in quotes, silver needles in the shop? And absolutely yes. We actually have one that uses the silver needle name, but then we modified it, Gossamer silver needle. Stunning, Eruption, all of these as a grade are silver needle grade. This is a great time to talk about the grades of white tea so that you're clear about this. And by the way, does grade in the Chinese lexicon imply better? No, it really implies different. So silver needle is the bud only. Is this bud, when it's picked, devoid of anything else? Answer would be no. So this is another thing that's surprising about white tea. And I got to explain this because they actually pick a few leaves along with the bud. But wait a minute. I'm looking at my compass in my bag. There are no leaves in there. Yes, that's true. There are no leaves. From the leaves, so they pick a few leaves with the bud, they bring it back to the production facility. What do? Hey, we got to separate the bud from these few leaves. What standard do they use? Are they just looking and saying, you know what? We need to sell more silver needle this year. Let's just pick a few buds on it. No. At this level, so for example, at the compass level, you'll notice uniformity in the leaves or in the buds. That's because they go through by hand and pick out uniform buds. What do they do with the rest of the leaves? Do they just throw them away? Oh no, they create a different grade. So they either create a grade in here that we call Taoist eyebrows, or they create a grade in here that we call spring tribute. What's the difference between those two? Well, one of them is mostly both of them are broken leaves, mostly broken leaves. One of them has occasional buds in it. That would be the Taoist eyebrows. The leaves tend to be more green than brown. But when you get to the spring tribute, very few buds and these little puny things, and mostly brown leaves. So that's the division. And all of you who are thinking that I forgot about one of the divisions, I haven't forgotten about white peony. So what's the deal with white peony again as a grade? Glad you asked. It's at the high level, it's a bud and 2 leaves. A little bit lesser level, it's a bud and 3 leaves. So this grading system is currently valid and currently how they look at tea, white tea, in these areas. That's Fujian province. And so when you see these names, you know right away, this is the processing modality. Does it tell you the quality? No, it does not. it only tells you what modality was used. So that's why something like stunning, which has a, did I say stunning? That was a mistake. Something like compass, which has a stunning price, is different than the silver needle, which doesn't have an erupting price. Yes.
What is the pick grade of this tea? And I think by this tea, they mean the one that we're having today.
Oh, so the questioner asked a very great question. Are we treating you to the highest grade of silver needle, or is this some dregs from somewhere? Good question. This is the highest grade. It's one of the highest grades. We have a few of these high grades here. And what differentiates in terms of quality these silver needles? Well, first off, taste. Taste is one thing. Second, when you look at the leaves, uniformity. Third, the tea liquor itself. The tea liquor, and I'm going to give you a little clue here. When it's yellow, it's probably a lesser grade. As it's clearer, it's probably a better grade. So this came a long way from the history, and I'm not even done with the history yet because we're still talking about this invention process. And now we've gotten ourselves up to 1850, and then I'm going to get you to 1857 with one sentence. And that other sentence is in Zhenghe, they have big number. I'm sorry. They discovered or hybridized big number leaf. And that's another varietal. And then they do something similar in Fuding. So there's communication between all of these places. And you see on the map, they're not that far away from each other. So somehow there's communication, and they're either discovering or creating, hybridizing new varietals. And so this is happening with great regularity in the 1850s. So don't get too far in the weeds with that, because I could introduce a few other things and your head would be spinning and we'd be getting away from silver needle. So let's continue with silver needle, because I want to ask you this. When they started producing silver needle, who in the world was consuming that? Who in the world? Well, in the world, no one. In 1796, it was all internal consumption. Gradually, a very small percentage started to get to the world. Now, how did this percentage get to the world? Well, the farmers came up with an idea, and producers and marketeers at that time. And what time am I talking about? I'm really talking about after 1850, decided, because in the same immediate area, and this is why Fujian is such a fascinating province for tea. They're doing everything. They're doing green tea, they're doing red tea. Well, they're not doing fermented tea, but they're not doing yellow tea, but they're doing a lot of other things. The oolong teas, different styles of the oolong teas. And so the red teas were all craft teas that were side by side with the white tea farms. Why does this make a difference? Where was red tea going in the 1800s? It was going to the continent. And I'm talking about the European continent, Britain, and that continent, going to Russia. And how were these farmers indicating value? How were they signaling to consumers? Oh, you're getting the best stuff. They were sprinkling silver needle on the top of it. So a consumer opens the box, it arrives in London. Tea buyer opens. Oh, good. I know this is good because look at these big old fat buds, white buds on top of the red tea. So this was what was happening, and this was how this was getting abroad. And it wasn't getting abroad as a separate tea, not really. When did it start going abroad as a separate tea? Late in the 19th century, it started going abroad as a separate tea. When did it get really popular? In 1912 to 1916, this was the boom time of white tea, particularly silver needle. And where did most of it go? Most of it went to Germany, not all. Some went to some other parts of Europe, but quite a lot went to Germany. So in 1916, this was the height of white tea leaving China, going abroad. What happened in 1917? Fell off the cliff. But why? Did people just stop liking white tea? Oh, I'm not getting enough calming. I don't have enough clarity when I'm drinking this. No, that's not what happened. World War I is what happened. Who could afford tea? Even if you could afford tea, were we shipping across to the European continent? No, everything was a mess. Everything was cut off. And that was the end of the height of white tea until 2007. So essentially, it closed in on itself and became something that local people consumed, but not the international population. Yeah, you had a few exceptions, but not many. In 27, because the government promoted, because local marketers promoted, there started to be an uptick. And by 2012, that started to become a little bit more significant, because shortly thereafter, a scientist in China made the very startling announcement, which, by the way, influenced all of you, whether you know it or not, because it made the price of this jump overnight. Because the scientist said, oh yeah, I've been studying white tea. Me and my colleagues, we have been studying white tea, and what we've discovered is it's great for women's complexion. And so all of a sudden, half the world was interested in white tea. Now, the tea master is indicating to me that you are all thirsty. And more importantly, she's thirsty. So it is my great pleasure and my great happiness to help relieve that thirst and have Xiaobei, tea master, come to the fore.
哎，早上好 ，Good morning. My name is Sophie. Yeah, we do, the silver needle. Yeah, so let's take from the Fujian. So living in Fujian. So this is my section. So this is my I like it today. I put it in my tray. And then so.
So you see the setup, the tableau. She uses 3 cups to dissipate the heat faster. By the way, I think it's important to mention a couple things about her methodology or our methodology. This methodology was developed over a 2 or 3 year period, and it was constantly tested against what tea masters in China think is the best way to brew this tea. Not in the big cup, that's not what I'm talking about, but the best flavor. And as such, all these details that we share with you are relevant to getting this best flavor. This is all a package deal, so to speak. It seems like it's individual details. And in fact, they are individual details. And if you miss one of them, is it going to damage your enjoyment? Probably not. But are you going to get a replica of what you get here? And the answer is no, you will not, because each step that we take has a specific purpose. All right, so the first thing she's doing is heating the cups. Why do you heat the cups? You want to make sure that all the attendant leftover, whatever it is, soap stains or dust or whatever it is not there. You don't want anything to influence the end flavor and aroma of this tea or any tea. So you go through that process. You can use any water temperature between 175 and 212. But then when you start dissipating the heat, you got to use 170 or 175. Really, you should be using 170. The higher the grade is, the lower the temperature, as it turns out. And why is this important? If you use even just a few degrees hotter, you tend to flatten the flavor. Now, my friends tell me they don't like flat flavor. I know I don't like flat flavor. So we do everything we can to actually make that flavor brighter, because the tea leaves, if you let them, will give you a bright flavor. Now, if you're in tea prison in one of the big chains, you can't have a bright flavor because they're using the wrong temperature. But that's tea prison. All right.
You've also got a water filter, right?
Yes, we have a an industrial water filter. We don't just have an industrial water filter. And that's really important unless you have a natural source of water that's really, really good. For example, if you were living right next to Hetch Hetch, that's a good source of water. And you wouldn't need a water filter. Now, pay attention to what she's doing. Still dissipating the steam. And by using 3 cups, you can do it faster. If you use just 2 cups, that's fine too. Either way will work. We're trying to be efficient.
And you use steam and heat interchangeably when you talk about this method, but those are actually 2 different effects, right?
There are 2 different effects. The steam is probably the more important effect out of this, but yes, there are 2 different effects, and I'm referring to both. So she gets it in the cup. I put 2 minutes on the timer. One last dissipation of steam. And you'll notice she'll pour it on the side of the cup. She's not interested in hitting the leaves directly if she can help it. And you'll see something. We had an old customer who we haven't seen in a while come in yesterday and actually order this tea. And when she saw this configuration, because look at this configuration, it looks like on the surface, maybe a mistake has occurred here, because look, there's all these dry leaves on top. How does that happen? That's on purpose. Remember, how many steeps do you get from this? You get at least 3 good steeps. You're trying to keep some of these leaves on top so that as you do a second pour, the ones that are used will get out of the way and you'll be able to continue to get this great flavor through 3 steeps. So this is the technical reason that you go through doing this. And so many people, they take some sort of shovel and, try and get all the leaves dunked. That's wrong. Don't do that. This is the right way. And you'll see when you taste this today that this works really good this way. Now, the other thing you'll notice as you're looking at this is, oh, there's hairs on this. Who left their hair on the tea? These are not hairs. Well, they are hairs, but we use a big word to describe it. These are hairs that are called trichomes. And the trichomes actually have many of the phenolic compounds, the polyphenols, and they serve as a natural anti-insect component of defense of the plant. So don't be worried about those. And when you see the trichomes floating in the water, that's a good thing. Remember, they contain polyphenols. All right, so I've gotten you through 1916. We got up to 2007. Why wasn't it in 1949 or 1950 when there was a change in government in China? Why wasn't this situation immediately addressed about production of white tea, attention to white tea? And part of it is whenever you're going through a change in government, you're busy. You're busy reorganizing departments. And so actually the food/tea department at the national level lost track, in essence, of what was going on with white tea. And your timer's gone off. Yours hasn't gone off. Our timer's gone off. And you notice the tea master is going to separate the tea leaves, the tea buds, I should say, from the tea itself. And you also notice this is why you can't use a tea ball when you're doing this, because a tea ball will not achieve this result. First off, it won't keep some of the leaves above the fray, so to speak. Plus, you'll squish them all together. You're not wanting to do that. You'll break them up, even less wanting to do that. All right. So let's enter the quality arena. Let's first take a look at these things. Oh, even, fat, very nice. And from here, I even detect an aroma. Yes.
Somebody says, a participant says, a burst of floral, fragrant aroma, predominantly jasmine on the heated leaves.
So one of you has already gone ahead and brewed, which is fine. So a predominant florality. So we've skipped ahead of the quality arena and we're talking about attributes now. And yes, that's a good catch on this. There is a distinct floralness which doesn't exist on the Zhenghe that we have. So now you're already beginning to sense why we would have many silver nails. All right, so as we enter the quality arena, what are we looking for? We're looking to see whether where in the mouth the astringency is. If there is any astringency, we're looking to determine what's going on with aftertaste, and we want to know energetics. So we took a 170-degree sip, covered the tongue, and are trying to make a determination of the degree of astringency, where it is, what's this aftertaste, and do I detect any energetics? Sometimes, for some of us, we don't detect the energetics. That's fine too. That's fine too. That's not an issue because we're genomically different. So we're going to have different reactions. I'm going to take a second sip. Okay, I've gotten a pretty good idea of the quality attributes. I might even sneak a third sip in here and think about now the taste and think about also what aroma I'm detecting. Okay, it's time for you to brew. All right, so you're going to get your water, you're going to heat up the cups.
Participant says the infused leaves smell of this deliciousness, sweetness of melon and very fragrant, floral quality as well as a freshness that gives me a visual of newly sprouted buds of or leaves.
So this participant has already tasted. They've got that freshness, hints of melon, hints of floral, just a totally engaging experience. In fact, you could almost say it is like a compass. It's registering where you're going to go. All right, so for those of you who are brewing right now, you notice Tea Master is dissipating the steam. Everything ready?
Another participant says she's getting definite floral scent, freshly cut grass kit as well, and that with a juicy and refreshing flavor.
Juicy and refreshing flavor, floral scent, hint of grassiness. So you all are in the ballpark right away. By the way, the Tea Master just added the leaves to the heated cup, trying to make sure that all the leaves are getting some heat. And it's going to add the water to the side of the cup. Your timer should all be set for 2 minutes. Okay. So what you're getting here, oh, actually, you're telling me what you're getting. I'm not supposed to be telling you what you're getting. So that's, yes.
Well, just one of the participants says, hey, I can't stop smelling the heated leaves.
Yes, the heated leaves are out of this world good. And again, think back, because almost all of you have had Zhenghe silver needle, and it's really good. But is this not something very distinctly different and just out of this world good? By the way, the last commentator also made a comment which I should have stated or restated about the juiciness, because there is a juiciness to this. And in general, what I find is when teas have that juicy nature, we consume them quickly because they're just good. All right, so we've gotten to 2007. We went to 2012, where half the population in China at least recognizes, oh yeah, I better be drinking some white tea. There's a huge uptick in white tea at that time. White tea farmers from about 2002, 2003 were busy, especially some of the more prominent ones traveling around the country, trying to drum up interest in white tea, both from a flavor perspective, from a potential health perspective, visiting with leaders in Beijing. So you have all sorts of activity, which gradually translated into an upsurge. The upsurge became a torrent as the 2000 teens went along, and white tea is a rage right now. All right, your timers went off. You're going to separate the tea leaves from the tea liquor.
Participant says, first sip of this tea is just to faint for. Its deliciousness, juiciness, bursting in my mouth. And it's revitalizing right away.
All right, love this comment. First sip, revitalizing right away. Fresh, juicy, stimulating. In fact, it's so good, it's a knockout. They almost fainted when they had that first sip.
Another participant says the mouthfeel is smooth with a very light astringency, easy to drink and delicious.
Mouthfeel is smooth, easy to drink, little astringency, just delicious. This tea is a whole nother type of silver needle. Yes.
Crispin says it's delicate, yet it's a knockout, like you said.
Delicate, but a knockout. Absolutely. And sometimes when people are casual, when customers are casual and we deliver the tea, they look and they say, oh, you forgot to put tea leaves in. There is a little bit of color, but there's not much. And yet, for the apparent lack of color, look at how strong this is.
Another participant says this has a distinctly different character than the other silver needle. It has a kind of lemon zesty floral scent and flavor.
Love the lemon zesty floral scent and flavor. Zest always suggests to me a burst of activity. And I think that that's what this participant has rightly detected. You get a burst of activity as you taste this. And when's the last time you tasted a silver needle that gives you a burst of activity? Yes.
Participant comments, she's curious, does this version of silver needle have the same associated health benefits as the tea entitled silver needle in your shop?
Great question. So the questioner says, let's start thinking scientifically. I love the flavor, but I got to know, are the health benefits similar or identical to the other silver needle that we have in the shop? So here's partial answer. The partial answer is they're not identical, but are they close? Yes, they are close. Why aren't they identical? Couple reasons. You have two different varietals. The silver needle in the shop is from one location with a separate terroir. That separate terroir, and that's why I gave you the map this morning, because when you look, it's all in a horizontal, almost a line. And so roughly the terroir, roughly the weather is going to be the same. Why do I say roughly? Because the silver needle in the shop is from the interior. The silver needle that you're drinking here is from right next to the coast. So you do have some differences. Now, if you ask me, are both silver needles, Compass and the silver needle in the shop, are they full of EGCG? And the answer is yes, they both are full of EGCG. Does one have maybe 10 to 20 more grams, not grams, milligrams of EGCG? And here at this point, I have to say, I don't know because I didn't measure. But I know that they're relative. And I know that overall, all the silver needles we have in here are perceived in China as hugely anti-inflammatory and as having great effects in terms of heart health, in terms of skin health. These are all thought to be what these silver needles, whether they're from Fuding, Zhenghe, or Jinyang. Yes.
A participant says this has a very satisfying astringency to it.
Great comment. You know, usually you don't have those two words in the same sentence, astringency and satisfying. But you all are so good. You're really taking these terms and now using them the way the Chinese would. The Chinese would absolutely stand up and applaud that comment that you just made. Great job.
Another participant says, this feels like spring, bright flavors, slight astringency, feels lighter than the Sophie's Cup of Tea silver needle, that the other silver needle in the shop.
You know, that's funny. Great comment. And I'm going to focus on feels lighter than the other than the silver needle, than the Jungho silver needle that we have here. So let's parse that a little bit, because let me add a word or two to that. Lighter in terms of mouthfeel, absolutely true. Let's compare it though to burst of flavor. Burst of flavor is not light. Burst of flavor is aggressive. The silver needle, the Jungho silver needle here has slight sweetness, but not this panoply of flavor and grab your attention right away. Yes.
Another participant says the smoothness grows and expands. It's got a very long finish with lingering flavors.
Smoothness arose and expands. A lingering smoothness, a lingering flavor. What a great comment. Even as I'm talking to you here, this thing is all over my mouth. It's very present. So again, when you talk about comparisons, it's really important to make sure that we talk very specifically, because this is, in essence, pretty powerful.
Another participant says she's getting more of the honeydew melon flavor as the cup cools. And she says, before Cherry asks, what's the food pairing for this tea?
Okay, all right. So a couple questions here, a comment and a question. So as you go through, or as a participant goes through this cup, they're detecting more of that honeydew. So I love this description of honeydew because, or this descriptor honeydew. And I love it because when you get at the height of the summer, a really, really good honeydew, you get two things. You get presence, sweetness that draws presence. But in addition to that, you get flavors which suggest almost a floralness. Honeydew doesn't have an exact floralness, but there is almost that sense that there's this pleasantness of fruity floral in it. Now, to the second item. If I were going to pair this with food, how would I think about it? Remembering that though not heavy, it is powerful. And also remembering there's lots of things in this. See, the Jungho and the Sha, I could put that with almost any food because there's a consistency of flavor all the way through. Here, you've noted that as you go deeper into the cup, other things, other impressions, deeper impressions. So it would have to be something quite light that you would pair with this. So let's say that you made some cookies that weren't too sweet, and that the cookies didn't have any chocolate chips in them. Cookies didn't have any peanut butter in them. You know what they are? Now that you are getting me to think about these are butter cookies. Butter cookies after a nice lunch with compass. That would steer you in the exact right direction.
Participant says, yeah, shortbread. She's thinking shortbread.
Yeah, perfect.
Perfect. Somebody else says he thinks this would be a great celebratory tea.
Oh, I love this comment. A great celebratory tea. Yes. So on the day you win the lottery, make sure you invite all the friends over, have that shortbread out here. Here's to my victory.
How long can you store this tea?
How long can you store this tea? This is white tea. So white tea, when stored properly, just keeps getting better and better. You could fairly store this for 20 years, but you'd have to store it properly. So what does that mean? out of the sunlight, cool temps. Also, you would have to have an expectation that the flavors would morph a bit. But would they morph in an unpleasant way? No. Probably, although we haven't done this, it would be my guess that the fruity floralness would come even more to the fore. All right, let's see how I'm doing. Oh, gosh. I'm still in balance. What a rarity. Okay, so we get this sense of where the white tea industry is. We get the sense, the alleged health benefits, especially in any of the silver needles, appear to be about the same. Are the silver needles more anti-inflammatory than the other white teas? The answer would be yes, they are. That's what science seems to be currently pointing at. And in some ways that makes sense, because remembering that a bud of any plant has the most energy in it, right? Because in order to get that leaf opened up and on its way and being a productive citizen of the tree or bush, you got to put some energy. And that energy means that if we get that before all these leaves have opened up, we're going to get some benefits from that. So these are some of the things you should take away from today. White tea is a shorter history than other tea modalities, probably started around 1796. White tea took off at the end of the 19th century and ran a very, very productive course all the way to 1916, then fell off the map. Really, white tea didn't get back to that 1916 level until the middle, until around 2010. So that's how much of a fall off there was. But now there's great attention to this because the more research they do, the more they know the following things. Polyphenol content is high. EGCG content is high. Anti-inflammatory is high. Caffeine is high. We know all these things really clearly now. What exactly is this going to do to your body in terms of what? Does it add 30 years or 40 years, 40 minutes? What's the deal? You know, and if you pay more for it, do you get more time in your body? Obviously, we don't know the answer to that. And so while all these things are being worked on, it would be my estimate that there'll be scientific estimates to these questions over the next 5 or 6 years. That's how much research is being done. Still, the quantity of white tea being consumed worldwide is relatively small. And the quantity of LCS knockoffs is increasing daily, including in India, where they have stuff that they call white tea because they sun dry it. But let's see. Let me think about this a minute. So what do I do with a fermented tea? Oh, I sun dry that too. Should it be white pour because I sun dry it? Oh,
That's a thing, right?
forbid. Yeah, only if you're trying to fool the public. So these are all things you have to pay attention to when you're thinking of buying white tea. You get white tea, get it from Fujian province. Somewhere in Fujian province, you're going to get the likelihood of getting really good white tea is much higher. And the likelihood of having gone through this particular process is much higher for getting Fujian.
A wrap-up comment from another participant. If I can only bring along one tea on a trip, Compass will be on the top list for sure.
Great comment. This commentator says, if I were forbidden from taking but one tea and had to take a long trip, it would be Compass. Me too. All right. All of you had great commentary today. There's some things that really stand out in my mind about your approach to this tea. Really, really a carefully thought out approach. This is a fun tea. I absolutely love this tea. Next week, we have another fun tea. And it also has a fun story. And you know me, stories and tea go together. So do big words in tea, but I'm not sure I can find the right big words for next week, but I'll try. So next week, we're going to do Blizzard, which is a jasmine tea. In the meantime, your responsibility this week is to stay healthy. We'll see you all next week then. Bye-bye now.
Bye, everybody.